Welcome back to Castle Rock AM. Reporting from the attic of Needful Things, this is CM Alexander with the news. In entertainment news, Castle Rock welcomes a celebrity this afternoon, Gloria, a Gila monster from Nevada, who is famous for being able to fire a rifle with her tail. Don't miss your shot at an autograph at the Ace Merrill Memorial Library and Garage later today. This is Castle Rock AM. You're listening to Castle Rock AM.
Welcome back to Castle Rock AM, your bi-weekly Richard Bachman Book Club podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Joshua Kahn, alongside CM Alexander.
Hey, guys.
And Benjamin Graham.
I forgot what I said.
I did too.
This is so embarrassing that it happens every week.
Every week of the show for the past 20 years
20
that we've been
years.
doing this show. And we are back with The Regulators, a Patreon selection from Anthony Natarelli. And today we are covering through Chapter 8 with Ben leading our discussion. Ben, take it away.
Okay, so we pick up in Chapter 5, approximately 24 minutes.
Jesus!
Chapter 4 might have taken a full minute, so let's say 25 minutes since the opening of the book. And we immediately find out that Kali has picked the wrong day to stop drinking.
That's a good way to put it. Were you guys super sad when he's like, and I also need to get a new job because he has these resolutions, stop drinking, stop going out on weekdays unshaved, and get a job. And he's like, it's not like I died. Oh, Kali.
Yeah, as he's thinking of this in the middle of a hail of bullets that has just started pouring towards him, because there is a large pink Good and Plenty and a big futuristic hearse in the middle of the street firing something that looks like shotguns.
Yeah, when we get the bullet later, I lost my mind. Oh, I did want to point out with Kali's reflecting on his day, the small nod to, I think, what really happened to Kali, that he drops it in there. Because there's all these rumors about why he was taken off the force. He's reflecting about his law career, all the things he'd done, and because he's never been in a shootout before, and this is that first shootout. But he mentions that 1 year in internal affairs. And I was like, oh, that's why Kali got shit canned. Something happened in his year in IA. That tells me everything I need to know.
I like in this section because it starts very quickly, and Kali, the second gunfire starts moving. And I love how it's written because it says something along the lines of his awareness of half our cast drops away, and he narrows down to just the people directly in front of him, who happens to be Peter, crying and screaming while holding Mary in his lap, Steve, Cynthia, and Johnny.
Tom.
Well, Johnny was nearby, but then he kind of moved off. Yeah.
The two groups in my head are easily mix-upable.
Right.
But I love how it's written because it narrows down, and all the characters we lose track of. It's a great way to give us, the reader, that like tunnel vision that he has.
Oh, Gary and Marielle.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh. Sorry. I hate them.
Yeah.
So much, because as chaos is raining down again for the second or third time in this neighborhood, they are like, both of them are just knocking people over, like shoulder checking super hard. Cynthia goes down and twists her ankle. And she's like, you pieces of shit. It is so satisfying when she gets her arm blown off. Is that shitty to say?
No, it is pretty great.
They are the most self-serving, and it's weird that pretty much every time Gary shows up, the story devolves into just an outright comedy.
Yes.
It's a weird vibe shift.
This whole book is a weird vibe shift. I just want to put that out there.
That's actually very true.
As we get to the screenplay section.
Holy shit.
Later.
That shit's great. It's the moment here that I love, though, is that as people are trying to pull Peter up and he's fighting it, that I think it's Kali grabs him And it says something to the effect of, once Kali got involved, Peter couldn't resist anymore. Like that's it. And that Tom yells out that he'll get Mary. And they feel him like stop fighting a little bit, knowing that's full well a lie. But Kali's like,
dead.
Good note, Tom. way to lie to a grieving man.
Can I ask you guys, if you saw Gary and Marielle doing what they're doing, and you were also running towards that house, would you go towards a different house? Because I couldn't help but think when I saw their behavior, I'd be like, no. And I would run to a different house. Because that's a huge red. You don't want to be in an apocalyptic situation of any kind with those people.
Oh, yeah. Gary is the guy in the zombie movie that gets bit and
and
covers
lets the zombies
it up.
in.
Yep.
And,
yeah.
Does something stupid.
Yeah, no,
for sure.
He's going to cause
havoc
before this story is done. But first, on their way into the Carver house, Steve gets grazed by a bullet on the leg. It's fine. And after Steve gets grazed, this whole section, it was so difficult to take notes.
It jumps around a lot.
Oh, I just didn't want to stop reading.
I
didn't want to stop reading to write down my thoughts because it's so immediate and you don't want to stop because the next sentence could be something absolutely insane. Which is why after Steve gets grazed, I don't know what exactly happens between then and there, but my next note is Mary gets blasted in half.
So I think that's where our two groups
Marielle?
kind of divide. Yeah,
okay,
Marielle.
that was my confusion. I wrote the wrong name.
Yeah, Gary runs. He gets to the house first because he trampled everybody on his way there. So did she. He runs in, and she's right behind him, but not quick enough. And a bullet of some kind nearly takes off her whole. I love how it's described. It's so disgusting. Her arm like flies up in the air, like she didn't do it, and it's barely attached to her. And we like leave that to go to Audrey.
It's what I imagined was the T-1000 in Terminator 2 when it gets shot in half, and it's like
it's sort of that movement. Yeah,
that's the whole shoulder is hanging to the side of the body. Gross. As they run inside, we then get our first glimpse inside the Weiler house. This is where the book changes.
I have so much to say about like Audrey. These are my favorite parts with Audrey, honestly. Like the Audrey and Seth stuff.
I'm loving this stuff. Yeah,
me too.
Yes, most of it, this is the really going into this book. This was the thing that I'm like, I know it's coming up. I don't remember how well the Seth stuff holds up.
Oh, yeah.
But the Audrey stuff, it is so scary.
Mm-hmm. Fucking horrifying. Absolutely.
It is too bad that a lot of, I didn't notice it on the first read through, but listening to the audiobook, there are certain things that are supposed to be read as scary, which are just things that autistic people do sometimes. That's not the best. First, let's get to the Audrey stuff. It starts with, she had a place to go.
Audrey has a laughing place.
Yes.
I wrote, her place to go, Dreamcatcher, Dr. Sleep, Booyah Moon.
Yes!
Misery.
It is side of a hill on a picnic she had with her quote-unquote very good friend. There is no subtext, but I decided to read it in anyway.
Nice.
Yes. I have a lot to say about that.
There is
a
definitive romantic angle.
Can we just talk about?
Yes.
Because we're not quite in that scene yet. So like real quick, just here we come to understand that while Audrey had a place to go, her husband Herb did not have a place, and she thinks that that's why he didn't last, and she's still here. And she kind of reflects on Seth, sort of like sucking him dry like a vampire. A lot of the things she says are more like Seth is doing it, but then later she kind of changes that, and we come to find out there's more about that. But I just, in this part that we're going to be talking about today, I love how much we learn about her husband because I like him so much. Mm-hmm. He just seems like a really amazing guy, and it made me super duper sad. But so Ben, as you said, she's at Mohonk Mountain in upstate New York. And the way that she talks about this place and her friend Jan. They went there when they were like in their early 20s and had a beautiful picnic. I don't think Bachman wrote it this way intentionally, but I definitely read their relationship as more than friendship, because the way she talks about this place and the lasting impression it made on her, and she even like notices the gold in Jan's hair and stuff, and she talks about it the way you talk about like your favorite informative moment with like your first love.
If I remember right, the premise for like this is an actual memory that she's going back to, essentially, that she's turned into this. And it was because Jan's dad rented this cabin for like a weekend as a present for something. And it was just the two of them this whole time. And so, it's so funny because I did not pick up on the romantic thing. And then as soon as you pointed it out, I'm like, oh my God, yeah, it's all there.
Yeah, I'm shipping them so hard.
All of the influences in this, you mentioned Dreamcatcher. The thing that was completely Dreamcatcher to me is the manifesting the phone. As soon as that happened, that's when I was like, all right, this is how you do it. Good.
Yeah, this was a while before Dreamcatcher. Yeah. The phone is very scary. And maybe, I don't know if I've ranted about this on the main feed, but I could not see it as the Skinamarink phone.
I love that.
Listeners, if you haven't seen Skinamarink and you like movies where mostly nothing happens, you should watch Skinamarink and think of how scary a toy phone is.
If you like movies that are nothing and then a nightmare, watch Skinamarink.
I still think about that movie.
I do too. The phone thing also reminded me of Black Phone, the Joe Hill short that we've covered on Patreon. Just, I don't know, maybe that's like a cheap connection, but I just love kind of like seeing influences in people who aren't related to each other, according to these episodes. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we've said king like a dozen times.
We tried. It's fine.
Yes.
Our false reality only held up this long.
We're in our laughing place.
From my favorite Bachman book, Sad House.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, I made us skip over a really cool part where we get some background on how the family may have encountered Tack.
I thought that was fucking
It was
rad.
really, really neat because Audrey gets a letter from her brother that she's like piecing things together, because we talked about this in the last episode, but he had sent her that postcard and he was all excited. And then when they talked on the phone, he's like, no big deal. And he did this weird, like, what she called cocktail party laugh.
Yeah.
That she'd never heard from him before. That seemed super fake. And then after they died, she got a letter from a geologist, Alan Symes, of the Deep Earth Mining Company, which sounds like a nightmare company. Sounds like a horror movie company. So that would have
It's a little less on the nose than Diablo mining.
That's true, yeah.
I prefer to go with Search for the Old Ones Mining Company.
Yeah.
Their mission statement's very clear.
Cthulhu Mining. And he explains, like, I just took him to see the pit. We didn't go in because that would have, violated whatever. And she's like, yeah, but he told me that they didn't even stop. So I know he was lying and maybe this guy is lying. And then we jump into her laughing place. And I have the word nipples in my notes about the red phone.
Why? I don't remember.
Oh my gosh.
Took me a second,
I'm so
but now I
excited.
remember. Go ahead, CM.
So the phone is Audrey's signal, the red phone on the picnic table when she's in her special place, that Tack is distracted. So when the phone disappears, like, she has to go back. And Jan this whole time, like, finally is sort of like actively participating in this fantasy and tells her she needs to escape. And when she comes back, like, we know that she has been topless. She doesn't know that, though. And this is where I got really terrified, because she's like, oh, my nipples hurt because Tack has been making me squeeze my nipples again. The way Bachman is willing to go there, quote unquote, for horror, like, just talk about things that if I had to write out this happening, like, even the mere thought of it, I'd be like, ooh, no, that's too much. That's really awful and gross. It's the idea that you would lose yourself and then you'd come back and some force had been making you hurt yourself in a sexual way too is
very bad.
So fucking horrible.
This makes sense why I didn't know what you were talking about, because my entire notes for this section is everything is bad.
Well, I think I took the most notes on this section, so I don't know what that says about me.
Well,
yeah.
anyway, the apartment is covered in drawings that Seth has done, which
is cool, except they are nailed to the walls with like spikes that he found in the garage. It's very scary.
it's cool foreshadowing, though, that there are these childlike scribbles all over the place.
The one scribble that we do get to see in this section we're reading is very cool.
There's another piece of foreshadowing here that just spooks me out. We get a few of them when after she comes back and realizes what her nipples are doing, and she thinks about the sexual nature of it, and she kind of has this thought about, well, she's like, well, he's an 8-year-old boy. I don't think he's interested in breasts. So she's figuring it's more Tack than Seth, which no fucking shit, Audrey.
Right.
And she thinks shortly before Herb died and then cuts herself off. Like, so Tack must have made them do some freaky shit.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Did you guys not think about that?
No.
Ooh. Thinking about all the sexual statues from desperation and getting scared.
Oh, yeah. When she expands on when she's standing there topless in her blue shorts, reflecting the same kind of blue shorts Cassie Stiles wears. That was the moment I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Well, and the fact that she thinks the movie unlocked Tack, the movie The Regulators that they rented, we don't get more about that. It's fascinating. You probably can't say Ben. It's okay. I have a feeling that that's some more foreshadowing. This book is really good at foreshadowing. I love it.
And as she's standing there kind of just ruminating on her hellish existence, she finally decides to run when she looks out the window and sees Mary, then David, then the redhead.
Completely had forgotten about the redhead.
It is.
Me too.
What makes the narrowing of focus at the start of the chapter so cool is anything that happens outside of our narration.
I missed that entirely.
Yeah. It's so cool.
That rules.
For having such a large cast of characters and such a small amount of space that they are all occupying, it's really cool how Bachman handles where everyone is at any given time.
Oh, yeah, because the redhead's running into the Carver's house. That's where we find her. Yeah, because Oh, that's so cool. It just all clicked for me. That's great. But when she sees all this, also not to mention the Hobart's house is still on fire because it was struck by lightning.
It started to spread.
Yeah. But yeah, that moment of like, okay, this is the moment I have to make a break for it. And then she hears what it's referred to as the voice that comes from Seth, not Seth's voice. Very little do we get Seth's voice. It is all mimicry from Tack, which is a lot. But Tack takes control of her like a doll and spins her around. And the way it's described that she, in order to stop her scream, it was like a hand put over her mouth, but put at the back of her mouth.
Yes.
Ugh. And like, it's such a horrifying, claustrophobic feeling to think about. I feel like I'm choking on air thinking about it.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we cut back over to our group at the Carvers. Can we get a head count? Anybody have that written down?
Yeah.
Brad and Belinda Josephson, Cammie, Jim and Dave Reed, Kim and Susie Geller, and John Marinville that are in
the Carver kids.
and the surviving Carvers.
I like the moment when he looks around and he sees every surface in the Carver house is covered in Hummel figurines. And he's like, they seem so normal.
And then he starts to giggle and he has to stop himself. I love Johnny.
I love that bit.
I just love Johnny's. He's obviously a different Johnny. He's like what we wanted him to be in Desperation.
This version of Johnny that can't stand the idea of leaving the redhead girl outside, even though he's like, I don't know for a fact she's dead, but I know for certain she's dead. But I still can't leave her out there.
Okay. I Is it a good idea to risk your life for a corpse? Am I just cruelly practical, or would you guys also do that? Because I was like, why? She's dead.
If we were in this situation and my ass was on the front lawn, fucking leave me there.
Yes.
Are you kidding me?
Same, you guys. You have my permission. If I'm dead, I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
even if a buzzard starts to munch on me, I'm dead. I don't give a shit.
Right?
It's fine. Let it happen.
Even if it costs you everything.
I
Save
know.
me.
I know.
This is not a surprise.
Do you guys feel like Johnny in Regulators is Steve in Desperation?
Oh, okay. Sort of.
He gives me the vibes that Steve gave me in Desperation, because Steve in Regulators gives me, dude, you're a huge fuck up, you little sweetheart vibes.
Steve in Desperation was reliable.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't a hero. This Johnny is a hero.
That's true.
And I think that's but I see where you're getting at. Like,
Feel like
there's that
Had
attitude.
Steve been given more page time, he would have been...
Steve is the kind of person that if Steve were in that book's God's plan to be the hero, he would have found the way to rise to that, I think.
As they're in the hall, kind of discussing the plan to drag this redhead whose name we should probably know. I should probably know.
She doesn't care, she's dead.
Fair. As they're discussing their plan to drag her inside, Belinda Josephson kind of shows up. They're all crawling around this house because bullets. I only bring this up because Belinda Josephson is the first time I have ever heard Richard Bachman write a fat person well.
Oh, yeah.
We have met Belinda Josephson several times.
Yeah.
And here at random, they're just like, oh yeah, she's a bigger lady. And it is not important to her characterization. It is not important to like her anything. It's just, oh, Brad and Belinda are big folks.
Yeah.
And I love it.
And Brad and Belinda rock.
They're
They're my favorites.
I would have run to their house and hoped that they were there.
I'll trust anybody diagnosed with terminal thickness.
Yeah.
So they kind of talk it over, and then is this the part where they go to check on her?
Mm-hmm.
And we get the maybe she's alive.
Oh,
Poor
fuck.
Johnny.
She's laying face down, has not moved, but they still have to check. And he grabs her by the hair. Her name's Debbie. Grabs Debbie by the hair and pulls her head up. And there's like a sound that happens when her face, what's left of her face, some of it stays on the ground and the rest of her head comes up.
That's why it's important not to be fascinated when a little boy is gunned down in front of you.
Good tip, actually.
Speaking of tips, we've got a 7-inch long, 2-inch wide one coming at us.
I did not know where that was going. But I appreciate it.
It was a real stretch.
Yeah.
No, that was good.
It's because we pick up with Steve Ames, and that's what she's pointing at. No, the crawling back, Johnny finds the bullet.
With quotes.
Jesus, yeah.
It's described as a black cone, and it's sharp. And Belinda points out, like, this can't possibly have been fired from any gun that exists. And Johnny had seen the guns. He's like, well, I know it came out of a gun. And she says it's like the drawing a kid might make of what they think a bullet is, which kind of goes back to the stuff we've been talking about with Seth.
It's how I drew bullets. As I read that, I was like,
yes,
oh my God, oh my God.
I had all of these like weird long triangular things in my notebooks that I don't know if they were bullets. I look like a fucking psychopath because it would be lines and lines of long triangles just over the page. No one else, just me.
When I was a kid, everything I drew shot lasers.
Lasers are so good.
Yeah, lasers are good.
We get a little bit where Susie Geller is asking where Debbie is, and they're just like, don't worry about it. And then we get a little sidebar with Steve's backstory. He's my favorite. I know I just said Brad and Belinda were my favorite, but Steve's my favorite.
Steve frustrates me.
Oh, I love this guy.
I don't like this Steve.
He's
exhausting to me. I can't deal with it. I can't deal with with his flakiness.
This is the kind of person I wish to grow up to be. He is just he went to college and then flunked out because of bridge.
Competitive bridge. He was gambling.
He was, and he's just kind of this drifter.
Yeah, he's very much a drifter.
And he seems zen as shit, and I love him.
I do love the zenness, but I would kill him.
I love
Hey,
that.
no problem, man.
I love that he is once again driving someone else's property.
Yes, that is funny.
when this happens.
I am not shipping him and Cynthia.
No, I would hope not.
No.
He seems much older in this version.
Even if he, like, we talked about this last episode, I imagined him the same age, but he does read as, like, older.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to dwell on this. I have two things to say about the narration that I'll just get out of the way while we're talking about Steve. Can't stand the way Frank Muller does Steve's voice. Drives me insane.
Some of his line readings are real choices, and I liked it. I
generally like the way he narrates a book, but there were a few I was like, oh, why didn't you retake that?
And I can't stand talk.
Yeah.
I hate it every single time he says talk. I'm like, nope. And so I've stopped listening to the audiobook because I cannot do it.
He has some of his line readings for Seth Tech are very good. They are very silly.
All right, I'll check
does
some of those.
like a very snotty fancy lad voice. It's great.
Yeah.
But as he's going through his backstory leading up to this morning, he has this mantra of no problem, man. And as it comes to where we are right now with him standing in the Doc's living room, there's this amazing sentence that goes, quote, if all this wasn't a problem, well, then Steve guessed that problem was a concept without meaning. That's so good.
It really is.
This is almost like a flashback he's having because he's standing in the living room kind of frozen and Cynthia pulls him out of it and he does the cookie cake line.
It was nice to get that back. That felt good.
This scene that's unfolding when he comes back to reality with Marielle, because her arm is almost falling off, and Tom brings his black bag, and Collie's got a belt, and Steve, and Collie are gonna
wrestle this woman?
Well, you wouldn't think you'd have to, but she was like, listen, you whiny little woman, like, her burns are awesome.
Yeah.
Give me some fucking drugs or I will kill you.
Like, I get why Gary drinks.
This
is what I'm trying to say.
This whole scene is peak. I feel like sometimes I will find things in these books funny that y'all don't.
Yeah.
This entire scene is like, he's like, no, this is a bit.
Yeah.
This scene is going to be the funniest scene
I love
that
it.
I've ever written.
She shoves Collie away as he's coming at her with the belt, and she shoves him so hard that he falls back.
The part when Marielle picks up her arm, she grabs her almost severed arm by the wrist and like starts pointing at people accusingly with it.
It's fucking rules.
I think this is why I'm irritated with Steve, though, because he's helping out, and they kind of have her in a hold because she like flipped out because she wants drugs before they tie off her arm and sew it up, which I think I get, and I'm not a medical person, so maybe I'm a moron, but...
Tourniquet me first. At least do that part. Give me the drugs before you sew me up.
I think if your shoulder's been blown off, like...
Just do it before the shock wears off.
Yeah. But they all have her, and then sweat drips into Steve's eyes, so he loosens his grip, and her arm falls off.
It just pulls her arm straight off. I love it.
He's
Gary
so
yells, put it on ice.
He wants to put everything on ice.
He puts it on. He yells, "Put it on ice!" and then immediately vomits on a framed picture of a parrot. I was like, "What's happening?"
The pictures in their house. We didn't even talk about it.
Tom's house.
I think Tom's a crazy
Tom's
person.
House. He is a vet, but do vets just have strange animal funny photos in their homes?
It was my favorite part of the reading of the book.
Yeah.
The delivery, because Steve is just wandering and there are framed pictures, and one's of like a border collie or whatever, and it's like,
I love this.
Border collie, blank the border collie could count to 8 and developed a taste for wine or whatever. The line reading is they do the comedy threes, he goes through 3 of these pictures, and then the line reading of Steve going, none of this is happening, is so funny. Made me laugh out loud.
The whole end of this chapter is so fucking great. I do love that it sounds, when we break it down, it sounds really silly, obviously. But the fact that all of this happens at such a breakneck pace doesn't give you the time to laugh as much.
It's funny
until you reflect on it.
Yeah, it's funny to talk about it, but reading it was freaky.
The chapter ends with them, Collie holding Marielle's arm, severed arm, as she falls to the ground, is kind of sputtering out her dying words. And it ends with her looking into Steve's face and clear as day going, who the fuck are you? And then dying.
She doesn't die.
Well, she passes out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
right.
God, that
they're
is
like,
great.
at some point, Collie is like, Doc, is she gonna live? And he's like, fucking look at her.
He's like, probably
She should
not.
already be dead.
And at the end of the chapter, we go into one of these little asides, these world building bits.
I love these.
And I think this one in particular gave me a few red herrings, because I thought I was reading too much into this, I think.
Okay.
Because this little side bit is a script from an episode of Moto Cops. First of all, real episode or not?
Is Moto Cops a real thing?
No.
Then
I mean, yes.
Yeah, wait. No.
don't fuck with me.
I forgot. What's our fiction? What fiction have we settled on?
Did you guys get the Alan Smithy reference?
Yeah.
It was written by Alan Smithy, which Josh, I'll explain because you're giving me a look. That is a name that directors use when generally it's because the studio has fucked with their movie so much that they are ashamed to have their name attached to it. So anytime you're watching something and you see Alan Smithy, that person does not exist. It's a way to get out of being attached to that project.
That's wild. I've never heard that.
Yeah, this episode is by Alan Smithy.
That's amazing.
Produced by.
Mm-hmm. So we're sitting around the crisis desk looking at the situ screen, which I think is hilarious because, like, you watch situations on the screen, so it's a situ screen. Anyway, whatever. And we have Colonel Henry, Snake Hunter, Bounty, Major Pike, Rudy, and Cassie. And they're monitoring something called the Force Corridor, which is exactly what it sounds like. It is old alien technology that is headed towards Earth. It's basically 2 long metal plates with big square protrusions sticking out at different intervals, and it hums and crackles with blue fire. It's a hallway of death, I guess. Mm-hmm. And the part that stuck out to me that I was like, ugh, Cassie's freaked out about it, and Colonel Henry's like, hey, bitch, calm down. It's 150 light years away. And Major Pike is like, well, how fast is it moving? And Colonel Henry's like, well, we basically have 72 hours before, like, we're all done for. So, yeah, be freaked out. 72 hours is not a lot of time.
It's very Saturday morning cartoons.
It
the
is
writing isn't the bit.
It is such a fun episode. Like, you can picture it so well. And what's interesting, this, like, gets me. I'm such a sucker for this kind of plot line.
Yep, me too.
Suddenly, the meat wagon shows up, and there's its crew, and they're there to call a temporary truce because of the whole Earth being in danger thing. And it's just like as soon as this part happened and then we were done with this episode, I was like, well, no, let's what happens next.
I love a good uneasy alliance.
Yes,
they're so fucking classic.
yes.
It's such a trope.
I
love
would
it.
also do absolutely anything for Bachman to make a Saturday morning cartoon show.
I want to watch the show.
It would be so insane that I would watch every episode. But here's the thing that this, in my head when I was reading this, I was expecting this to be, oh, this is our final act. This is, Seth is bringing this force corridor to Earth. And now the countdown in the chapter, at the start of each chapter makes sense. now we know that Tack's possession is going to come to some ultimate conclusion in 72 hours.
71 hours and
and 20 minutes.
But then I think it might just be the row of cars.
It's the Force Corridor is Poplar Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, later when Johnny and Brad are upstairs, he sees the fire corridor. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
That's why I was 6 vans, like 3 by 3. I guess we'll find out.
I guess so.
Well, it was reading about the description of the Force Corridor and then looking at the map and being like, it's a hallway with square protrusions on either side.
And things are on fire and there's blue, there's like lightning, which is the blue crackling. Shit. Good job, Josh.
And it explains why Meat Wagon is part of this assault, because he wouldn't be with the other characters.
We leave that, and it turns out to be not that much, unless it does later. We'll see. But Chapter 6 picks up immediately where we left off.
With Audrey and Sack. Sorry, I'm ashamed.
That's good.
So Sack is floating around and doing impressions.
Oh, like literally floating. He glides towards Audrey on, like, his toes are scraping the ground.
Which is such an eerie visual.
It gets very poltergeisty with them.
And she's trying, she can't move. She is paralyzed. I like that she tries to summon a phone. She tries to connect to Seth inside of, Seth.
Yeah.
Saying, don't let him hurt me.
Yeah, she's begging Seth. And she's still a little bit not really understanding in this moment, because she's part of her dialogue at him in her head is as if he and Tack are like partners in this, which is not the case. And she changes her mind on that pretty shortly here, but that kept bothering me a little bit.
Yeah, because she keeps thinking that, like, why would Seth help her? Because he needs her to, feed him and stuff. It's something.
Well, considering she's been living for months in a daily torture, I don't fault her for going down dark paths there.
It made me feel sad for Seth, who's also being tortured, which she realizes later.
But as things are looking bad, suddenly Seth is back and tells her that Tack is gone building.
The fact, it touches on this in the earlier section there, that it reflects that Tack has grown stronger instead of weaker, as we experienced in Desperation, knowing that his powers got weaker. And now the fact they're getting stronger and he can go off and build is horrifying.
We don't have to talk about this, but I just want to mention it because it's real good horror fuel. Before they have that conversation, Sack punishes her by making her go into the kitchen and guzzle honey. And she's like, before that, he makes her hit herself and her nose is bleeding. So she's choking on honey and blood. And then she falls to the ground in the kitchen and he makes her bang her head against the floor while screaming, "Never leave me, never leave me." And then it's just like, boom, he's gone, and Seth is trying to communicate to her. And this is where she softens towards him because he's trying to communicate and he is not very verbal, so he's having a hard time making her understand, and he like hits his own leg out of frustration. She's like, "Don't do that, it's okay. Tell me if you can, and if you can't, it's okay." It's just so sad.
She then briefly connects with him telepathically. This is a trope that bothers me. The trope of the...
Oh, he's totally normal inside his head.
Inside his own head. It's the God's Tom thing. Yeah. But they talk and reassure each other. And
he tells her, "I don't blame you for running, and you need to run, go across the street, get help. It's important because..." And then he's gone.
The image that he puts in her head, because he can't get the words, of the jester juggling Hummels, and the Hummels are all the neighbors.
Oh my God.
I fucking love it.
Meanwhile, we meet back up with the crew inside of...
The Carvers?
The Carvers? Yeah, the Carvers.
Yep. I like, because this is where Johnny, Brad, and Belinda are kind of like really taking charge, the three of them. And this is where Brad and Johnny go up to get the gun, because David has a gun upstairs. Yep. And Belinda is like yelling out the window to Tom's house. Like they're trying to connect and like figure out what's going on and, where is everybody, what's happening. It's just a cool, because, we've had groups split up before in other stories. They're not also close enough that they can like connect with each other, even though they can't be together. And I just like it.
It's very cool. We also were briefly reminded that Cammy Reed exists.
Oh yeah, the Reed's mom.
The Reed's mom, she's around. It's at this point where they're talking about getting the status of each house, because Steve is shouting back over to Belinda and people keep joining the conversation. Like Collie joins it at one point as they're shouting back and forth. And when Peter joins the conversation, he points out that the street out front is completely deserted again. And they're like, great. And he's like, no, I mean, there's not even fire trucks or police or looky-loos from down the block. And there's nothing out there.
That's a very bad sign, because there should be.
I wanted to point out one thing, that as they begin communicating between the houses, that Belinda purposefully does not mention that they are going to get a gun.
Oh, yeah.
And it is, she immediately is like, oh, why would I do that? And she calls it rat hole thinking, which I love that turn of phrase. That like, oh, just the human selfishness of like, oh, we need the advantage here. Why? We're all a group. I think that is probably gonna set something up later. I'm not sure what.
I don't want it to. This is the moment I made a note. I want to give you guys a theory that I've been working on, and it's completely nonsense, but I'm gonna sell it. What if this book, this story we're experiencing, is the reason that quote unquote God called the people he did in desperation? We talked about a vast amount of people this deity had to hurt to get all the people in this place to make it happen, to make it so Tack couldn't get free. We are seeing now what happens if Tack could have gotten free. And I wonder if I want to wait and see how this book ends to see if those pieces line up. But that's the thought that's going through my head.
That's interesting.
And
I didn't think about that.
It's one of those things that's like, yeah, we need Johnny. This universe's Johnny isn't that universe's Johnny. So we need to give him the things so he'll be that Johnny when the time comes. Like, that's the sort of thing I'm working with. That it feels fun. All right.
As they're talking and discussing that there are no sirens and that there's a tumbleweed outside.
Yeah, not native to Ohio. It's a Russian thistle.
Peter decides, you know what? Fuck all this. I'm going to get my wife. And then Vans is just immediately.
He's kind of the Barbara of the group. Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah. Johnny and Brett are upstairs they've gotten upstairs and are getting the gun when they look out the window and they see the Vans and see Peter outside. And I love that Johnny, only thing he can do is to break the window.
Yeah, he doesn't have time to open it. Yeah. He just smashes it with a gun to yell at him that there are Vans coming. This is crazy because so I listened to it and then I read it and I didn't realize just in the middle of this happening, we cut to a page in the book of a drawing that was placed in Audrey's journal shortly after Herb died. And it's a kid's drawing of a van shooting at a house, which is about to happen like crazy.
I did not
see it. Interrupts the story and goes such a weird place.
Huh.
And it it was done by Seth.
I couldn't tell it with the drawing because you see the cowboy hat and the shotgun, but there's no drawings of bullets. And for a second, it looked like the power wagon was just going to drive straight through the house. So I thought that's what it might be foreshadowing.
As the Vans pull up and line up into a firing corridor, it has been 59 minutes.
That's so fucking stupid. That's crazy that little time has passed.
Which means as the shots start fire, we are just hitting 1 hour.
That's wild.
It makes me so mad that the Regulators isn't a real movie.
Right!
Because I want to be like, oh, how much is this lining up?
Yeah.
Because we know Seth and Tack are in Audrey's house watching the Regulators. And it keeps saying the final showdown is about to start.
At one point, Audrey remarks at the start of this conversation that there is 20 minutes left in the movie. So
We'll
we
see
should
if
we should
this-
see what
Yeah.
There's a long description of these vans just lighting up one side of the street. And it goes on long enough that when it's like, oh yeah, and Peter's right there, I was like, oh, I forgot he's outside.
same.
Yeah, he's holding Mary's corpse and no bullets are hitting him, thankfully. Or, well, not thankfully, I guess, for him later.
Sure thought, thankfully.
Yeah, but they're just destroying everything. And while this is happening, Seth starts to scream in Audrey's head to go to her safe place. And he's trying to explain why that's important, but then he's cut off. And before she escapes to her safe place, she looks out again and she notices that the neighborhood is distorting. Which I didn't expect. What the hell is happening in this? What book is this?
Reality is warping outside.
Yeah, the the curveball that line of dialogue threw into my brain is insane. And then from here, it just gets more confusing
Tack
and
is
crazy.
building.
It's
Yeah.
such a surreal book.
Yes,
it
it
is. This is the reason that I was so excited to get to this book, because so many of the things that happen are just like out of left field, insane. When we get to the description of the buzzard.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh, but first, sorry, can I make a segue?
Yes, absolutely.
Fuck Pie.
Pie is
I-
awful.
What a cunt.
That
I stick by that.
It's
fuck pie was from Thinner.
yes.
God.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you.
I just hate her so much. I also hate that. They're all hunkered down in the kitchen when she viciously throws her daughter, Ellie, off of her, who is startled by the suddenness of this, and like runs to Ralphie, who I think Jim, one of the Reed boys, has been hanging on to, like screaming, "Give me my son," because that's all she cares about and can think about. And it does say like she loves Ellie, but blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, I hate you.
Yeah, she has like a complete dissociative episode, basically.
And you know what? That's fine because there are bullets flying through the house and she gets one in the face.
What a horrifying... She doesn't even get a bullet to the face. The bullet strikes a copper pot and the shards
Oh, yeah, that's right.
tear
Ugh.
into her face. So at one point she screams because now she's blind.
She's like, I can't see. And yeah, she can't.
And everybody in this room just saw this woman get her face rattled
Including
with
her
shrapnel.
kids, which
Yeah.
sucks for them. But
Yeah. Meanwhile, Johnny and Brad are upstairs when all of this starts happening. And just a split second before it happens, Johnny has the sense something is wrong. And then notes that Brad is panting. And that it's been what does he say? It's been a very cardio heavy day for a guy.
I don't want Brad to have a heart attack,
Me
you guys.
either.
I like him. I did wish that Johnny had been downstairs when Pie did that to Ellie, because his thoughtfulness towards her and like most of the adults like recognizing what she's going through did kind of make up for some of it and warm my heart. But I wanted him to share in my outrage.
Yeah, but he if he was downstairs, he wouldn't be able to find
The action
the
figure.
action figure.
That's right.
Not the action figure I was expecting him to find.
No?
I thought he was going to find No Face because he made such a point of that. But I think this is actually better.
Well, this thing was the one that in the first section, he makes direct eye contact
right.
with this thing.
He is the... Yeah.
I
And
love that he
they
tries
have
to explain it to Brad.
Yeah. He's like, oh, there's this cartoon. It's crazy.
Yeah, and Brad's not going to buy into this right now, but once everybody starts seeing the neighborhood change, I feel like we're good.
I forgot. I guess from here on, I don't remember anything.
Nice.
Is it because it's a fever dream at this
Yeah.
point?
It really is, because I was not expecting Peter to become a herald of No Face.
Yes.
Peter is standing out, and I was just, waiting
For him to get shot.
waiting for it, and they continue to fire, and he continues to stand, quote unquote, woundless, which I disagree.
Right.
Maybe physically. And he's standing on the front lawn in front of Mary's body, and he keeps thinking, I just got home from work, over and over like a mantra.
I love that it's described as that phrase being a bridge back to the sane, ordinary world. Because I've never been in a crisis situation like this, but I imagine like that's how you would feel. You'd find something like that and be like, this reality does not match up with what's happening to me right now.
I love how this section very quickly puts a lot of characterization into Peter, because
Yeah.
we don't have a lot of it. And just in this little section, we find out that it mentions how he's always been terrified of Mary's father.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it kind of characterizes Peter as this kind of snivelly little weakling.
Mm-hmm.
And that plays into when Tack comes to him first, speaking in the voice of No Face, a voice that tears into his mind like fishhooks, causing blood to erupt from all the holes in his face.
Yes.
That's a lot.
He's Bloodface.
He's got
Don't
blood
laugh
for
at
a
that.
face.
That was
It's like
stupid.
that.
So when Tack gives him this order in a little bit, it's in the voice of his father-in-law. I don't know. I think it's a neat little way to
Yeah.
not just make Peter just kind of a
Mm-hmm.
unimportant
It's more personal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is sick, but also
Yeah, well, that's kind of
Yeah.
Tack's, this version of Tack, this powerful thing that can read everybody's mind so well, getting so personal.
And if I can tell you my favorite part
Mhm.
is that he can see through the vans and the characters. He kind of realizes that they are a quote unquote cartoon,
Mhm.
but he also knows the voice is real. The voice is actually there. And as he's talking to these, he notes that he can hear the theme song. He can hear the
Yeah.
soundtrack of the cartoon that they're from.
It's not the cartoon. It's the
Oh yeah, that's right. It's the Bonanza theme song.
yeah.
Can I tell you my favorite part of this? Tack makes him crave spaghetti.
Yeah.
So weird.
It is so weird.
He's not hungry. Oh, I think he is.
Ugh.
Yeah, he slowly in a daze walks into the Weiler house.
He drops Mary's body on the ground first, which is so upsetting because we know how hard he
Mhm.
wanted to go out there and get her. Ugh.
I wish that was the last we got of Peter.
Oh, yeah.
First, we return to the Doc's house, where Pie is dying, and Gary is looking for booze, but finds his wife's arm. Again, a wild tone shift.
Mm.
It's so ridiculous. And but Tom has sutured this arm up and he's given her the best shot she's ever going to have.
Mhm.
But I immediately, he gives Kali a look when Kali asks. That's probably not, man.
Yeah, and this is where I think they're deciding they're going to have to do something because she lost a lot of blood, and if she doesn't get immediate medical attention, she's going to die.
We get a little bit more of Steve being psychic.
Yeah.
It's weird with how little fanfare this is brought up. It's just taken for granted. Oh yeah, Steve's always had psychic powers. And you're like, sure.
But it's also because Steve doesn't give a shit about it either, clearly.
Yeah, that's true.
And he has this hunch and looks outside, and this cracks me up. Because he looks out and he's like, something has changed.
Yeah.
Well, he's not
But
from
he
this
can't.
neighborhood.
But I'm not from this neighborhood. So maybe if I was from here, I could figure out what it was. And then everyone else looks outside and is like, the house across the road is a log cabin.
It's such a big
Is Steve stoned?
Maybe.
It's that or he's an idiot. I love him.
Yeah, he's kind of an idiot.
But it's so funny. And they're like, yeah, down there, that house is a adobe hacienda. And there's a horse rail out front. And Steve's like, any of those things could have been true.
But that's when Steve also volunteers to be the one who ventures out and goes looking.
yeah, with
because,
Kali. Because Kali's like, there's this secret wooden path that only I and the kids know about.
Yeah, I feel like
Weird.
the green belt seems like it's going to be real important coming up.
And there's a pipe there.
Yeah,
That gives me weird, what's going to
an
happen.
aqueduct that they
Yeah.
could crawl under the street to get from. They can get on that path to the next block over, but then through that viaduct they can get another block over, and that's why they're saying that's so important. They can get at least 2 streets away.
We learn more about that with the reeds here
Yeah.
in a minute, but
But before we get to the reeds, we see a vulture fly out of the burning Hobart house, but it's not right.
It's a buzzard from the Buick 8, right?
yeah,
Like that's
it's
how it feels.
it's what a kid would draw if they had never seen one but heard about one.
Yeah, we get this later, but one wing is
like much shorter.
Yeah.
much shorter. The doc looks at it, they're like, is that a buzzard? And the doc's like, I don't know what the fuck that is. That's not a bird. It should be able to fly.
His instinct is to run and get his camera
I
because
love
it's like,
that.
oh shit, for the wall. Yeah.
When he said that, though, I was like, they should be documenting this because no one's going to believe them
Right.
if they survive.
That's the end of the chapter, and we have a section from June 10th, 1995 of Audrey's journal. It started over a month ago.
Over a year ago.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, this journal entry is from 1995.
I did not even
I went back
that.
and checked the dates.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
'cause
was like,
Herb
oh
was
my,
still alive.
that's right.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Man, this gives us a lot more insight too into their relationship. They're making the space in their hearts and their lives for Seth, and like understanding the things he really likes and sort of modifying their lives to meet his needs with his rituals and things that keep him happy and comfortable.
I like that. It's just the stuff like
Right.
one of the signs that something is going wrong is he starts walking around the house. She calls it pacing or
Like
no, she calls it
sniffing the air.
sniffing the
yeah.
air. Well, it's the leg thing. He starts walking around the house on tiptoes without bending his knees.
Yeah.
That's just a thing autistic people do. Some of them do sometimes.
Yeah.
I could see them like noticing signs that he was going to have an episode of some sort.
Yeah.
This is one of the things that she mentions is on the night that Tack made both Audrey and Herb hurt themselves for the first time. They could hear Seth crying in the other room, which I feel like that right immediately should have said which side everybody's playing on.
Right. It also gives us a lot more of what Herb was going through. Like she notes that he always tried to cheer up by like making dumb jokes and stuff, which I love. But the last few months, the last year, he had gotten really thin. He was losing weight. He was really pale. Like going back to Tack using him to like feed himself.
You get all the sense that Herb had a really good heart.
Yeah.
That's like the takeaway it feels like from all this. But her things change when Herb wakes up one night because the dream floater's in their backyard.
Like life-size one.
Yeah.
The dream floater, and that's why Seth is upset. He lost his dream floater toy, and now there's a real one. And it's heartbreaking because they watch it fade, and they're like both really freaked out about it. And then when they're having breakfast, Herb is like, hey, Seth, guess what? I know why you were upset last night. Because he was doing the thing, and they were telling him, oh no, I think this happens now. He's like, I know why you're upset. We're going to find it. And you know what? Worst case, we can't find it. We'll buy you a new one. And at the mention of buying a new one, he freaks out, and he, with his mind powers, I guess, shatters some china that Audrey's mom had given her and just, completely loses it. And Herb spends like the rest of the day, like digging up the yard, just doing anything he can to try to find the dream floater. It's just real, like it made me think of Poltergeist stuff. It's things are flying. It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Charles T. Nelson was there.
Yeah.
Wait, is that his
Craig
name?
T. Nelson.
Craig, yeah.
God
You were
damn
close. We knew what you meant.
Anyway, we get to chapter 8, and I took barely any notes on chapter 8 because it's really setting up our third act.
Yeah. Same.
Johnny thinks about how his manager thought he was crazy when he moved out to Ohio. He kind of reminisces about when this was a nice neighborhood an hour or so ago. And then Johnny has a discussion with Cammie Reed about the trail and the plans going forward.
I do like that. So the conversation essentially goes, Cammie says that her boys know the secret path in the Greenbelt. They can get a few streets over, and they want Johnny to give them the gun. So if something happens, they can take care of it. And I love that Johnny notes the words she's saying, but can also tell that really all she wants is to get her kids out of this house.
Yeah.
That is her entire goal. And because it seems like no mother would be on the side of this.
Right. Yeah. I'm glad it's described that because
Yeah.
I was like, this is weird.
And then he's just like, you know what? I have no problem giving up the gun, but I'm going too.
I love how she looks down at his belly because it's Johnny's described before as having a gut, and she's like, "Can you keep up?" And he's like, "Well, not in a marathon, but through the woods, probably." He's like, "That's a very cool response." Yeah, duh.
I like that during his like little pep talk, he's going over with the twins the plan, and he's like, keep the gun out of sight. Don't like rush up on people if we see any people, because we don't know if they're people. Like, if these people in vans, they could very easily sneak through the woods. But also, even if you see a cop, like, don't go rushing towards him because, quote, nervous cops have been known to hurt innocent people. And I went, based. And then he followed it up with, they never mean to. And I'm like, so close.
I thought about you.
Cammy and the twins have a moment. It's a sweet mother-son moment.
Yeah, where she like grabs his lips and she's like, you listen to me.
You know for a fact one of these twins is dead.
One's not coming back.
I do love too, Belinda interjects because she's like, this is stupid, you guys. I would stay with Belinda.
I would do whatever Belinda said.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would too.
And then Ellie hugging Johnny. It's nice for her to get some comfort before he heads out.
Before he really heads out, he does need some of that Moto Cop lore.
That's true.
Can we, not to drag it down, but he hugs Ellie and then he's asking Susie's mom, Cammy, is that it? Mm-hmm. No, that's the Reed's mom.
Oh, yeah.
Kim.
He starts to ask like, hey, can you help with this orphaned girl now who like just needs comfort as you're comforting your daughters, so you get it, right? Before he can even finish, he's like, nope, just so cold too. I wanted to punch her.
I want her to die.
Yeah, I do too. And then Belinda's like, come here.
Yeah.
And holds her.
It's like I said, this is all setting up our third act. And the villain's plan, I don't remember what it is, but this entire thing freaks me out. Because we come back to Peter with Tack, and Peter's already empty.
Yeah.
Peter's donezo.
He's shoving Doritos into his cheek, which I love Doritos, and that for me like really brought it home.
That's the thing that upset you, and not his eyes being described as bulging out so much they seem to rest on his cheeks.
Well, now that you put me on the spot, Ben, yes.
Well, it sucks.
It was gross.
We got another eye split like a grape. Oh my God.
So much eye trauma.
Yes. It's Bachman. Of course there's eye trauma.
Always eye trauma.
Tack kind of plays around with Peter as a puppet, like in one of his toys, and then gives him a mission.
Thank God. Okay, I'm sorry. I was so worried that the mission was going to be fuck Audrey because Tack wants to so badly. But Seth has stopped him, basically, is kind of what we're told without being told. So I'm upset about what the plan is, but I was like, I'm so relieved.
It involves him leaving.
Yes.
Thank God.
But he tells Peter to go meet the man in the woods. Go sit with his friend. I don't know what that means. He says it's a man Peter had never met and never would. What?
It doesn't make any sense. I'm half expecting it to be a Moto Cop.
Unless he drew someone else into the woods and we don't know about it.
God, that'd be ridiculous.
On the cover of the book, there is a real weird cowboy. Just like peeking out around a corner.
Oh, this isn't an important catch, but did you recognize when this is way back, speaking of the stuff that's on the cover, when Audrey's talking about the phone she conjures in her head, it's the Melissa Sweetheart phone, which was the doll that Pi had in Desperation.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
Okay. Peter goes out to the woods, and Tack thinks about TV, let's say.
Tack basically, is this a part where it's like Tack came to Earth to watch TV? What a piece of shit.
It's because like he's like it's some primordial awful monster,
like binge watcher. It's weird too. It reflects though, which I like. In Desperation, we had that conversation about so much of this is like film themed. And what's it trying to tell us? And this is the same, but it's TV shows, which I think is cool.
Yeah. It
It
definitely
does
has
make
a
him
view.
less scary, though. It's like he just wants to fucking watch TV and drink chocolate milk and eat spaghetti.
It definitely has that like boomer vibe of like all these kids are on their phone too much. Oh, they watch too many violent cartoons. It's turning them into telepathic monsters.
Speaking of, we end with another episode, right?
Yeah, well, not an episode. It is a segment of the screenplay
Yes.
of The Regulators, and it's super racist.
Yeah. We had the China pit in Desperation. It's balanced here. It's the scene just before this final climax that we've heard about, and it's. I didn't write the details about it. All I remember from it is that the ingenue dies in the hero's arms, and the bad guys leave with the plan to return to the town, which is the final shootout we keep hearing about. So the villains have taken the, what's the trope when you kill the hero's
Main
love
squeeze.
interest? I don't remember what the trope is called, but yeah, they do that trope, which sets off his hero's journey. So when they come back, he'll be able to commit full violence and no one will judge him.
Yeah, I love how it seems like these things are setting up what our characters are gonna go through.
By this point, these little side bits, I'm so into I'm so into finding out what's going to happen in the woods that I was like, why are you wasting my time?
I can't wait to find out what matters out of these end of chapter excerpts.
Yes.
Like what's the one kernel that we could have pulled from here. Yeah. That's it for this episode of Castle Rock AM. Thank you for joining us. Join us for our next episode where we will be finishing The Regulators. For Benjamin Graham and CM Alexander, I'm Joshua Kahn asking you, are we going crazy? Because it feels like it.
Hey everyone, CM Alexander here. Thank you for listening to The Regulators Part 2. We hope you enjoyed it. As always, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Derry Public Radio or Twitter at Derry Public. You can send us an email at derrypublicradio@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit our Etsy store and our Patreon for bonus episodes and merchandise. Just search for Derry Public Radio on both of those platforms. And if you like what we're doing, please give us a 5-star review. And if you don't like what we're doing, pretend we're doing something that you like and give us a 5-star review. That's all for now, listeners. Goodbye.